Hi, welcome to Cleaning Procedures. In this video, I'll walk you through all of the procedures that need to be done throughout the day on the espresso machine and at the end of service in order to make sure your equipment works properly. There are a few cleaning procedures that need to be done throughout the day in order to make sure your equipment is consistent and clean. The first thing that needs to be done throughout the day is back flushing the group heads. In order to back flush the group heads, you're going to need a blank portafilter basket, which is a basket that has no holes in it. So I'll remove the portafilter from the group head that I'm cleaning and set it aside, lock my blank portafilter basket into that group head, then I'm going to turn the group head on for 5 seconds at a time, and then turn it off and leave it off for 5 seconds at a time, and do that cycle at least 5 times. This back flushing process should be done throughout the day in order to help clean the dispersion screens and the valve mechanism inside of the group head. We recommend doing this approximately every hour during service for each group head. The other cleaning procedure that should be done throughout the day is a more thorough cleaning of the dispersion screens. To do that, what we're going to do is use a flathead screwdriver to remove the dispersion screen, being careful to set aside the special screw in a container where we won't lose it. And then we're going to scrub the dispersion screen using a palo tool. To clean this dispersion screen, the technique that I recommend is putting it into a clean portafilter basket, like so, and then running water from your group head into the basket and using your palo tool to scrub one side of the dispersion screen and then the other, and then scrubbing the underside of your group head and gasket as well. Once you've scrubbed that dispersion screen, I would recommend letting it sit for just a moment to let it cool down before you reinstall it. A quick note, in case you happen to be using a Nuova Simonelli machine like an Appia or an Aurelia, there's a couple adjustments to the cleaning technique that I just showed you. First, on those machines, you don't want to run the group head without the dispersion screen installed because the path of hot water on those group heads is outwards from the machine, so if you run the group head without the screen, it will shoot hot water out at you. So on a Nuova Simonelli machine, what I would recommend doing is when you remove the dispersion screens and set aside the screw that holds it in place, there's actually two pieces, and you would want to take the dispersion screen and pop it into a clean portafilter basket, then use your palo tool to scrub it by running it under your hot water spout on the machine. And then the other piece of this is a dispersion plate. It's a piece of brass. It's going to be very hot when you remove it. I'd recommend letting it sit on your drip tray for a second, and then before you go to reinstall the cleaned screen, I would recommend just wiping down the dispersion plate with a clean paper towel, and then putting the pieces back together and reinstalling them. To reinstall the screen, all you need to do is take the special screw and insert the dispersion screen in the correct orientation, and the screw will thread in relatively easily. You don't need a whole lot of force to reinstall these, and you definitely don't want to cross-thread the screw or over-tighten it, so just finger tight should be sufficient. So that's the cleaning that should be done approximately every hour during service over the course of the day. At the end of service, we need to do a more thorough cleaning on the machine. To simplify things a little bit for end-of-service cleaning, I like to get the space a little organized by setting aside things that need different sorts of cleaning. So I'll set aside things that I need to be extra careful with, like my scales that I don't want to get wet. I'll set those off to the side. I will also set aside things that just go through a normal dishwashing procedure. Things like shot glasses, things like milk pitchers, and metal parts of your pitcher rinser. Those things can all go through a normal dishwasher or sanitizer. For pitcher rinsers like this one, you can just carefully remove the nut in the center that holds this plate in place and set aside that nut to make sure you don't lose it, and the other parts can go through the wash. To clean your pitcher rinser, I would recommend just pouring hot water down the drain and wiping it out with a clean towel. There are also some things that should be cleaned but don't go through the wash. So things like your tamper, just wipe it down with a clean towel. Same thing with your tamp mat and your knockbox. Any rubber components should not go through the wash. You'll need to do a final clean on your steam wands, which you should clean throughout the day anytime you steam milk. At the end of service, you just need to do an extra thorough cleaning by flipping to a part of the towel that you have not been using. So open up your towel and then just do an extra thorough clean and purge on your steam wands by holding the towel over the steam wand, purging it, and cleaning the outside. Now we're left with just the grinder and the espresso machine to clean. I would recommend starting with the grinder because we're going to clean the hopper and we have to let it dry completely before we put it back in the grinder. To start the cleaning process on the grinder, I'm going to slide the gate that closes the chute of the hopper closed so that we can empty out the grinding chamber and then remove any beans left in the hopper and put them back in a bag. So I've closed the gate on my hopper. I'm going to select my third preset that I've set to 22 seconds. When I run that preset, it's going to clear out everything that's left in the grinding chamber. Now that I've cleared the grinding chamber, I'm going to take these grounds and dump them in the trash, and I can then rinse this collection tray. Next, I'm going to get my open bag of coffee or some other resealable container ready so that I can put the remaining beans back into that container and then clean the hopper. Next, I just need to remove the hopper, being careful not to knock the gate open, and position the chute of the hopper over this bag to empty out the remaining beans. Next, what I'm going to do is rinse the hopper with just some warm water. I wouldn't use soap on this and I wouldn't send it through a sanitizer, but we're going to spray it out at the end of service each day and wipe it dry with a towel. We're going to make sure it's completely dry before we put it back in the grinder because we don't want any water dripping down into the grinding chamber. And I'll set this aside to finish drying while I clean the espresso machine. For end of service cleaning on the espresso machine, we're first going to hold both of our portafilters and pop out the baskets. And we're going to put these in a container that's going to let us soak these components in a Cafiza solution. And you want to be careful with these. You don't want to just drop components into a bucket because it's pretty easy to damage these baskets if you're not careful. So just gently place them in your container and we'll soak these in just a moment. To clean the group heads on the machine, we're going to follow a backflush procedure that's very similar to what we've been doing throughout the day, just with hot water. But in this case, we're going to add in some Cafiza to give the machine an extra wash. So in order to backflush the group head, I'm going to need my blank portafilter basket, some Cafiza, and the scoop end of this Palo tool. To start the backflush process, I'm going to measure out about 1/8 of a scoop of Cafiza into my blank basket. You really don't need a whole lot of Cafiza to backflush correctly. To backflush the machine, I'm going to take my blank portafilter with about 1/8 of a scoop of Cafiza, lock it into the group head that I am cleaning. I'm going to turn the group head on for 5 seconds and then leave it off for 5 seconds. And I'm going to do between 5 and 10 cycles of 5 seconds on and 5 seconds off. Once we've done at least 5 cycles with the Cafiza, we're going to remove the blank portafilter and rinse out all of the Cafiza that's in the blank portafilter basket. Then we're going to lock this back into the same group head that we just backflushed, and we're going to run another 5 cycles with just water to rinse it. And it's important that this cleaning process gets done for every group head every day. Next, we're going to remove the dispersion screens, being careful to set aside the screws so that we don't lose them. And we're going to add the dispersion screens to the bucket of components that we're going to then soak in Cafiza. It's also a good idea at the end of your backflush procedure to just take a Palo tool and scrub the underside of your group head and gasket. To clean these components, I'm going to put 1 scoop of Cafiza in this container and then fill it up just so that the metal components are submerged, not the rubber handles. We're going to let these components soak in hot Cafiza water for about 10 to 15 minutes. While this stuff is soaking, I'm going to finish up cleaning on the outer surfaces of my espresso machine and the espresso station. One of the components that remains to be cleaned is the drip tray. I'd recommend removing this, being careful to cover the drain hole, and then rinsing it in a dish sink and wiping it clean. When reinstalling the drip tray, it's a good idea to just do a visual check on the drain in the machine to make sure there's nothing there that's going to clog the plumbing. At this point, what we need to do is just clean the outer surfaces of the espresso machine and the grinder. And we can do that just by using a clean, lightly damp towel to wipe down the outer surfaces, including the top of the espresso machine. We just want to be careful that we don't put anything in the grinder, which is still open because we haven't put the hopper back yet. So just the outer surfaces with a clean towel. Alright, so at this point, my portafilters and baskets have been soaking for over 10 minutes. I'm going to dump the Cafesa water and then thoroughly rinse all of these components and then reassemble. I'll reinstall the dispersion screens using the technique I showed you earlier. Then I'll pop the baskets back in place and lock the portafilters in and leave them there overnight. And at this point, the hopper is dry, so I can put that back in the grinder. And also everything else that I sent through the wash is now clean, so all I need to do is reassemble. That covers all of the cleaning that needs to be done on a daily basis to make sure your equipment keeps working correctly and consistently.